Good morning, everybody. My name is Steve Kessler. I'm going to host our webinar today. We have a really special program to present today. Our topic today is called Introducing the Ultimate Defense. It is a video series designed to protect trucking companies against these predatory plaintiff attorneys out there that pretty much out to try to get as much money out of a trucking company as they possibly can in the event of an accident. So we're very excited to introduce this information to you this morning. Just a couple of real quick housekeeping things before I introduce our presenter. Everybody that's joined the webinar is muted, so we can't hear you. So if you would like to ask a question or make a comment, I would ask you to type that into the chat box, which you'll find in the tray down below, or you can enter your question into the Q&A box. And as those come in, we'll try to take your questions and see what we can do to make sure we answer those. So having said that, let me introduce our guest today. Many of you know Jay Womack. Jay is the founder and CEO of our company. Known Jay, Jay, for better than 20 years now, I believe. So, Jay, we got an exciting thing to introduce everybody today.
Yeah, we really do,
thoughts?
Steve.
Yeah, very good. You know what, Jay? I've been lucky enough over the last 20 years to talk to a lot of different trucking companies, and I have to say, especially in the last 10 years, uh, the topic of a nuclear verdict or nuclear settlements comes up all the time, and it's a huge concern for trucking out there. I don't care if you're a for-hire carrier or private. The plaintiff attorneys have learned how to aggressively attack a trucking company and get juries convinced that trucking companies are evil and they need to be punished. So I'm very excited with the information you're going to present to us today. So Jay, without any delay, I'm going to turn this over to you.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you, Steve, for all of that. I am obsessed with what we're about to talk about today. The plaintiffs' attorneys have attacked our industry. You know, we run an outstanding industry, one of the top 10 industries in the United States, and we keep the country going. Trucking and transportation keeps this country moving. I mean, if you don't believe that, go take a look at the COVID situation, and all of a sudden they threw out all the rules for trucking companies, and all of a sudden here come the plaintiffs' lawyers, and they're coming back more ferociously than they've ever come. And it really is my obsession to make sure that we can put this program in the hands of as many companies as we possibly can. And I think if we do that, we can completely change the trajectory of unwarranted settlements and nuclear verdicts that we're seeing in this industry right now. And I think we could save billions of dollars in this industry. So that really is what we're all about today. And I'm pretty excited to be able to show this information to you. Next slide, please, sir.
There we go.
Perception is everything. Now, here, this stat really bothers me because here's the deal. 70% of the accidents are caused by passenger vehicles. 70% are caused by passenger vehicles. And yet we are found guilty or have to settle 81% of the time. That is a huge spread. So we started looking at the landscape around us and said, what can we do? What can we do to shrink that spread? You know, obviously we caused some of the accidents, but we shouldn't be found guilty 81% of the time when we're only guilty 30% of the time in the industry. Now, this is statistically out of Michigan's Transportation Research Institute. So that's where this data is coming from. Any data we put up here, we can back it up with the information that we're about to show you. But that stat, if we can shrink that margin, if we can do that, and that's what this program is all about. Slide, please. This is a fascinating slide to me. As a matter of fact, this slide is so interesting. The American Trucking Research Institute, we saw the size of verdicts grow by 51.7% from 2010 to 2018. The one on the right, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute, I actually went to our marketing department and said, is that accurate? Is that right? And they pull that report. It's the report on the left, the red report, that shows that number. And this is critical mass. We wonder why our insurance premiums are going up. We wonder why we have so much problem right now within the industry. And it is the plaintiff's lawyers. That is scary because that's costing us operating ratio. That's costing us operating revenue. It's costing us profits. It's costing us angst. And it's costing some people their entire companies. So we had to be able to go do something about nuclear verdicts. And so next slide, please, sir. The problem is this. Most companies think it'll never happen to them. I was visiting with a prospect the other day, and they had heard me talk about this program, the Steve Settler program. I'm going to get to Steve here in a few minutes, but they had heard me talking about that program. And he calls me out of the blue and he said, okay, you talk to me about some type of a defense program that we can do to try to help at the scene of an accident. This company has a good accident to power ratio. This company has good numbers, and yet they've had 2 fatalities. Neither one were their fault. Witnesses at the scene of the accident showed that the four-wheelers were actually on their cell phones texting when the accident occurred. It's the same story that you hear every day in your company, that there's an accident, it was somebody else's fault. It wasn't your driver's fault. It wasn't your company's fault. But they had 2 fatalities, and they were pretty dramatic fatalities. And he was called concerned because they only have 20 million in limit of liability. And we all know what's happening with the juries nowadays. You just saw that number on the last slide, 46 million. 46 million. That's a scary number. So we wanted to put together this program that would actually talk about this and what can they do to try to stop the bleeding. And that's what this is all about. So the next slide, please, Sir Steve. Once again, it just shows the difference. And even a small settlement can be $427,000. And once again, I love the research that we get from ATRI. Simple things at the scene of an accident that we teach in this program, that Steve teaches in this program. Simple little things at the scene of an accident. You're going to hear me say this a couple of times during the presentation. Most settlements in most cases are lost within 12 hours of the actual accident occurring, because the driver, while they've been trained at most companies, when I go in and talk to a company, they've trained their drivers what they're supposed to do. But you got to remember, they've just had an accident. Their adrenaline's flowing. They don't have a checklist in place. They don't have a dynamic checklist in place. They haven't been taught over and over and over again with frequent and consistent training what they need to do at the scene of an accident. What most people's human nature is to get out and it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. What we train them to do at the scene of an accident is the 4 most critical things at first, and that is, make sure if your vehicle's movable, make sure it gets out of the way. Make sure you light that vehicle up. Call 911. Let them know what happened, and then go check on the people in the other vehicle if there was another vehicle involved in the accident. But the main thing is light it up and do it in that particular sequence, because this entire program is all about what can you do as a company to hand over to your lawyer to defend you in a courtroom, or to make a quick settlement as possible on this deal. So that number of $427,000, that is a real number. Next slide, please, sir. Most of y'all know who we are, because we have a list that we've been sending to forever. We've been around for 25 years. We've been doing web-based training. I know this after delivering 150 million training sessions to our clients through the years. My mission is to help your company get safer, more profitable, and defendable. That is my mission. If I can do that for the transportation industry, I will feel like my life is worthwhile. And the reason I want to do that is because my grandfather. So everybody has to have a good why. My grandfather owned a trucking company, and he went broke. And he went broke because he was a good old boy truck driver, and he knew how to drive a truck, and he knew how to deliver freight, and he knew how to do all those things properly, but he didn't really know how to run a business, and he didn't really know how to document his records and do those types of things. And I saw what happened to his family when that happened. And so that is my whole mission. I'm obsessed with this. I'm obsessed with helping your company be profitable and safe and defendable, because we are now seeing nuclear verdicts rise to the top. When I talk to owners and heads of companies, We can look at the ATRI's top 10 report of their concerns, but the number one concern is not on that list. And that number one concern is that they could lose everything they've worked for with one bad lawsuit. The same reason that gentleman called me the other day and said, "Did you tell me about a defendable case?" He goes, "Our limited liability is only 20 million, only 20 million, only 20 million." Next slide, please, sir. I cannot say enough about this gentleman. Then most of y'all know that we've been running boot camps and offering free clinics at our office in Irving, Texas for years. And we've had defense attorneys come in and speak and talk to our prospects and clients through the years. And we have never been able to find one that would actually put together a curriculum and a course that we could go to the market with. Steve Setliff has done that. And most lawyers don't want to do that. Most defense attorneys don't want to do it because they know that whatever they put into a film course is going to be subpoenaed into a courtroom. And the plaintiff's attorneys are going to look at everything we teach backwards and forwards. We know that going into it. So we have put some real thought. Steve has put real thought, and we put real thought into this program so that we can show it to our clients and show it to a jury. And the jury is still going to look at this and go, "Wow, that's a good company. You know, the company that uses this program is a good company. We really see that they're trying to do the right thing, and they're trying to do all the right things and all the right steps because it's the right thing to do." I got to see Steve the first time at one of our client companies, and they liked him so much they've brought him back every year. Great West has used this gentleman to come speak at their annual safety conference, I believe now a couple of times. I know he's been on webinars with them. Steve's reputation is impeccable, and to listen to him and to see him is really dynamic. And by the way, he really has more fun making presentations to your company drivers than to any group, because he says, "I can see the reaction on the drivers' faces when I start talking about what their duties are, what they need to do at the scene of an accident, what they need to do before, during, and after. So before bang and after bang, what they need to do in order to protect themselves." He says it's fun to see the light go off in their eyes, what they need to be doing about. Next slide, please, sir. So the plaintiff's attorneys, their job is to make you look as bad as possible. And they do everything they can to drive a wedge between you and your employees, your company and your employees, your company and your driver. And that is their job. That's what they're trying to do. What we're trying to accomplish with this program is to create companies that are so buttoned up that they can actually hand a package over to their defense attorney so that the defense attorney can settle quickly for less money, not settle at all, or eliminate the case from occurring completely. But when you see Steve sit there and lean in and start acting like he's a plaintiff's lawyer and start talking to a jury as if a plaintiff's lawyer would, I've seen him do this about 7 or 8 times now. And I've seen him do it in front of trucking company owners. And then I've actually done this in front of trucking company owners where you act like you're the plaintiff's lawyer and you're standing in front of a jury and you're building the case that this company is a well-run company. This company has all the attributes that you would want from a good company. And by their own admission, this company has a real good handbook. They spend a lot of time and energy on it. And by their own admission, they recruit the right people. And by their own admission, they're recruiting the right people. And yet, when they start talking about the handbook, they will start finding all those areas that you don't live up to, that companies don't live up to in the handbook. And they will look at the jury and they'll say, normally, this would be a $5 million settlement. But do we really want a company that's not operating properly? And they've built this case, no matter how good we think you have it, no matter how good you think your company is, they've built this case. And they look at the jury and they say, we need to send a message that we don't need a company like this operating in our backyard. My gosh, they don't even sponsor the Little League baseball. We need to send a message, make sure companies like this don't operate in our neighborhood, and send a jury result of 50 million. I have watched Steve deliver that And it is incredible to watch owners, safety directors, and people shudder because the ones that have been through lawsuits, and virtually everybody has at some point. If you're in transportation, if you haven't, you will. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And you need to be prepared to go down that path. Remember, this is about giving your defense attorney everything they need to defend your company and doing it properly and actually doing everything every step of the way and knowing you don't miss a beat, nothing falls through the cracks, and doing the right thing because it is the right thing to do in order to sway the jury, in order to find justice for us and beat that spread of 70% caused by the cars, and yet we're losing 81%. Slide, please. After the accident, it's too late. It is too late. Once the accident occurs, it is too late. Everything freezes. We have a slide later on that talks about everything freezes. But I want you to imagine at the point of impact, everything you've done is frozen in time. All of the files, are they up to date and current? Are you living up to the handbook? What does the outward face of your company look like? Have you done the proper training? Have you documented the training? Was the driver where he was supposed to be or she's supposed to be? Are the hours of service up to date? Once that wreck occurs, boom, there it is. So we have a solution to that. Are you in compliance? One of the simple things we want to look at is the accident to power ratio. We had a risk manager in here the other day, and he was talking for a major underwriter, and he said one of the numbers they look at the DOT is the risk to accident ratio. And if it's above 6.5%, the DOT's on your doorstep. Well, the plaintiff's attorney is going to go look at those types of numbers immediately. If you don't know where your number is, you need to know that because they're going to use that in front of the jury. They're going to say something effective. Well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this company is sending up smoke signals to the DOT that they need to be audited quickly because of this one number alone. We need to send them a message. So those are the types of things that we want to address in this program. Those are the types of things that we are addressing in this program. Next slide, please. This program includes, now this is unusual. I'm going to go ahead and say this right now. This is very unusual for us. We normally are very, very soft sell and soft pitch in our approach. I feel so strongly about this one. I really want everybody to take a serious look at this program. We have to treat this like we did the Dan Baker program because we have a partnership with Steve Setliff. It is not included in our current curriculum, but it is something that everybody ought to take a look at. Whether you're an existing client or a prospect, this ought to be the first thing you put into place. This program will help save your company money. We have two parts to this program. We have the training series that goes to the inside the walls, the company people. All of the people in your company need to watch the training series that's designed for the inside. We also have the series for the drivers. And if you have dispatchers, they probably need to watch both. We also have the checklist. We've created dynamic checklists that are electronic. And those checklists are detailed for the driver at the scene of the accident, and it's handheld, and it can be used on their phone, and it's very detailed. We're going to walk into that in just a second. But the training series and the accident checklist. Next slide, please. The training series is 2 courses, the driver course and the company course. It's only about an hour and 10 minutes long combined. It is not that detailed. What we've done is I read a lot of books, and what I don't like to do is go read 200 pages and have 6 pages that are the critical mass, and the other 194 pages are a waste of my time. That's how we approach our curriculum and our classes. Everything we do is specific to the point. So don't let 70 minutes fool you as to being not very much content. There's a lot of meat in this content. And we do test questions to make sure we drive home the point so that people remember things. On the driver course, the first thing the driver does at the scene of an accident, the second thing, the third thing, the fourth thing, they've got to be in a sequence that the defense attorney can defend their actions. One simple thing. If an officer asks your driver to move the vehicle, make sure that they acknowledge and can document that the officer asked them to move the vehicle. Otherwise, you might violate the scene. You might have impact on the evidence. So most accidents are lost within 12 hours because the driver, what's happening to the driver? They jump out of the vehicle, they have an accident, their adrenaline's flowing. The first thing they want to do is probably make an excuse. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't. They're going to go make a statement to the police officer. This one thing alone, if you don't remember anything else from the webinar, this one thing could save you. Do not let your driver make a statement at the scene of an accident. They don't have to. The driver needs to be polite, needs to talk to the police officer, but they need to say, I've just had an accident. I want to make sure I give you a proper statement of what really happened. I need time to settle down and gather my thoughts. I'd like to set up an appointment for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to come in and give my statement. That simple thing could save you about a third of your accidents, a third of your settlements. That simple thing. And Steve talks about that to the driver and why they need to do that. And then behind the scenes, they can sit down and talk to their safety director. They can sit down and talk to their owner. They can talk to the accident reconstruction person. They can talk to a number of different people before they go in and give their statement. They can actually gather their thoughts. Another thing he tells them at the scene of an accident. So once you've lit up the vehicle, you called 911 and reported the accident. And you go and check on the people in the other vehicle. When you walk up to that vehicle, walk up with a concept in mind. What are you looking for? You might walk up and see if you smell something, see if there's alcohol, see if they've been watching a movie driving down the road, see if there's something else going on. And then once you've checked on them to find out if they're okay, and Steve goes step by step the details that they need to do, and it's in the training course and the curriculum. It's also in the dynamic checklist that we're going to talk about. What is the appearance and the hygiene? How do they look? How do they feel? We had a safety director that came to one of our boot camps one time, and he said, I had the perfect driver, never had a, Steve, you may remember this. He had never had a bad accident, million-mile driver. Everything was going great. And this one day he had an accident. And this one day, this cream of the crop, a driver had on a t-shirt that said something to the effect of, I like to drive like a bat out of hell. And it just so happens that was the day he wore that t-shirt. If you think they didn't show that to the jury, they did. And they lost. One of the best drivers out there. Wasn't his fault. That t-shirt did him in. Little simple things like that. What do you do about citations? You know, one of the things that Steve had to talk about and how he had to work around in this is America. You are innocent until proven guilty. And he will tell your drivers, don't pay a citation. You have your day in court. Don't admit guilt at the scene of the accident. You have your day in court. It is the American way. It is the American system. He goes into great detail about that. Those are the types of things. Any legal request. He talks about things like social media. For God's sake, don't go out and tell the world what you've done on social media and defend yourself. Don't say anything. Don't call home and tell them about the accident. Don't call home and go into detail, because there's an old saying, don't tell your best friend what you don't want your worst enemy to know. Well, the plaintiff's lawyer is now the worst enemy to you at the scene of an accident, and your defense attorney and your safety director and your owner are your best friends. And he goes into that detail. And that's just the driver's side of the course. We talk about the company side of the course. What are the things they have to have in place? The equipment, the maintenance, the employee retention, proper hiring practices. He wants you to be able to say, we have a great recruiting department. As a matter of fact, we're so on top of our game that we have sent our recruiters to training, to HR training on how to recruit, hiring protocols, those types of things, at least in the last year. How many companies have done that? Because that is a point that the plaintiff's lawyer is going to look at the jury, and they're going to say, they have a good recruiting department. They're second to none. When's the last time they actually sent their recruiters to a class on new rules and regulations and hiring protocols? Well, they may not be as buttoned down as they say they are. That's what the plaintiff's lawyer is doing to you. This goes into detail. The checklist on this side of the course also talks about what everything needs to be in place, needs to be done. Drug and alcohol testing. Think about this. You need to have a place along all of your routes, and most of you probably do, but it may not be documented anywhere. You need to have a place along all the routes that if you have an accident, you immediately know where to send your driver for drug and alcohol testing so that you can prove they were clean. Who do you contact at the company? Who does the driver contact at the company? Who is the person on call 24/7 that takes that phone call, and what do they ask for and what do they do? I think y'all get the picture. Next slide, please. The dynamic checklist. One of the things I hate around this company is when I say, gee, I read a book. And I read a book called The Checklist Manifesto years ago. And the Checklist Manifesto talked about the power of a checklist. And the book was eye-opening to me. And I've lived on this premise ever since. And they tell the story about the B-17 bomber in World War II. And the B-17 bomber was probably the most complicated plane ever to be flown at that point in time. And Boeing developed the B-17 bomber, and they brought in the best test pilot in the history of the world at that point to fly this plane the first time. And he took off and he crashed and he died. This was the best test pilot in the history of the world. And if y'all remember, World War II was won with B-17 bombers. One of the main reasons we were able to just obliterate. And they went to the drawing board and said, what in the world are we missing? And it was a simple checklist. And Boeing developed the checklist for the B-17 bomber. And then the rest of the story is the 18-year-old kids could fly that plane and they won the war. Very powerful, powerful. Now, how does that relate to the trucking industry? Our drivers are professionals. We've trained our drivers. We've reminded the drivers. We keep training the drivers. We keep that with frequent and consistent training. But they can still forget exactly what they need to be doing at any point in time. So the dynamic checklist goes into point-by-point detail at the scene of the accident. It saves the information. They can take pictures. They can upload. Steve tells them exactly what they need to take pictures of to have a good defense. Take pictures of other people's license plates if you can get information on the driver's license, witnesses, because here's what the plaintiffs do. The lawyers are counting. They're counting on statute of limitations. They're counting on your driver turnover. They're counting on your not having the right information at the scene of an accident. Can you imagine being able to walk in to your defense attorney, to your safety director, to your owner, and saying, here's everything we need to defend ourselves. And it's all right here in the checklist. We've delivered, our company's delivered over 150 million classes, never lost a piece of data. This data will not be lost. How many cases are settled because you've lost the data? You can't find the driver. You can't find a witness. My friend that called the other day and was worried about their company with 2 fatalities, even though they had people that had witnessed other folks using their cell phones. What happens if they wait to the last minute to file that case and all of a sudden they can't find the witness that saw somebody else using a cell phone? You and I both know the stats point against the trucking company. Now, they talk about when should you call in an accident reconstructionist to come in and reconstruct the accident? I asked Steve that question when we were doing some of the filming. I said, Steve, when should you do that? And he said, that's a good question because it's expensive. Most companies don't want to spend the extra money to do that. But he said, I promise you, if they call an ambulance, you better call for an accident investigator of your own, because at that point, within 6 months, somebody, and every one of you safety directors out there know this, within 6 months, somebody's going to walk in your office and they're going to be asking for a check because they were hurt. One of the things Steve teaches the drivers do at the scene of the accident is once you checked on everybody, you back away and you pull out your camera and you start videotaping the scene of the accident. And he does it in such a way that they can play that in front of the jury and no big deal, because we're doing the right thing, because it's the right thing to do. Next slide, please. We've talked about this. Most cases are lost because the drivers jump out of the vehicle, or we don't have the DQ files in order, or we have done some negligent retention, or we've done some negligent hiring, or we haven't dotted our I's and crossed our T's. Any number of little things cause us to want to settle. And the insurance industry is settling because they're scared to death of the nuclear verdicts as well. So this class is all it's all inclusive on all of these types of things. Next slide, please, sir. Look, one thing I can assure you of is after taking the course, it doesn't end there. We continue to do updates. We continue to do all sorts of things. Juries change, laws change, sequences change, patterns change. What's going on in the world around us changes. You don't have to live in America very long to realize that. As of right now, this is best practice, but we're also going to continue to roll out to our subscribers of this course the best practices that we're seeing, the things that we're seeing at juries right now. What do we need to be working on? What do we need to be changing? No one can guarantee you're not going to have a nuclear verdict. No one can guarantee you're not going to have, unwarranted settlements, but we can do everything we can to mitigate those damages. And in order to do that, we need to make sure your management knows exactly what's going on and what the plaintiffs are going to say to the juries and what they're going to talk about to the juries and how they're going to try to make you look bad. I mean, as soon as I heard Steve talking about this at my own company, we have this manual, we have a handbook, we follow the handbook, except for me. I'm the CEO and the president of the company. I never put in for time away. What do you think they would do to me sitting on a jury? By the way, since we started filming this course and we started doing this course, I put in for time away. I do everything exactly like I'm supposed to from the top down. Now, I've talked to owners, and when I tell them that I'm doing that, they look at me and they shake their head and go, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And y'all own the people out there, y'all listening to this, y'all know exactly what we're talking about. HR will know exactly where to button up the hiring and retention protocols. See, we just think it's about putting the safe driver in a truck. No, it's about the protocols because the plaintiff's attorney is going to go after everything. Your HR people are going to know exactly what to do. Mechanics will understand exactly how important the documentation of repairing equipment and maintaining the logs are. I know y'all teach this every day, all day anyway. But it's just like the B-17 bomber. If you don't have the checklist, the best pilot can crash and burn. But with the checklist, 18-year-old kids fly those airplanes. The drivers are going to understand what's at stake for them and the company and their role in protecting the company, as well as what to do at the scene of an accident. Remember, most accidents are lost within 12 hours. Next slide, please, sir. I think most importantly, look, one of the things I know beyond a reasonable doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt, we delivered 150 training sessions. I know that frequent and consistent training works. I believe so strongly in it. We've had companies that win awards because they will do just a simple training curriculum. They'll win the Platinum Award at different state associations by doing just these two things. Assign 2 things a month to your drivers. Now, these are professional drivers. These are drivers that know what they're doing. They've been trained. They've got a license. And most companies think that that's enough of a defense in a courtroom. It is not. The defense starts when you start training and training more. They do 2 things to win awards. They make 2 assignments a month, which is not too much, frequent and consistent. They make sure that they pass with 100% and they have 100% participation. You do that and you will see your numbers change. You'll see your CSA scores change and improve. You will see your numbers overall change. You'll see your accidents go down and you will see your defendability go up. We believe so strongly in training. Our sales team trains for 20 minutes every day at our company. And sometimes more than that. Sometimes role play. That's how we value training. Next slide, please. We talked about this one. This one will make your operations person shudder. Time stops when an accident happens. As soon as the accident occurs, everything freezes. I want you to think about your files. your practices, everything freezes, a snapshot in time. Don't put it off. This is critical. Next slide, please, sir. Okay. Unlike us, we normally do not push for people to get into a program, but I feel so strongly about this. I really believe that we can change the trajectory of the entire industry of premiums, of claims. I want you to imagine if all 451,000 companies that had a DOT number out there actually took this course. We've made this course extremely affordable. It's $1,000 for up to the first 40 employees, $12 per employee for each additional employee. Don't ever let it be said that we didn't ask for your order and ask to do business with you. We would be honored for you to do this program. We want you to do this program. We've kept it reasonably priced. I understand this industry is tough right now. It's one of the toughest markets we've had in years. I've been doing this for 25 years, and this is the toughest market we've been in. This simple program can improve your OR because you have better safety. It can improve your insurance rates. We've actually had the risk manager in here from an underwriter the other day, training all of our entire company, by the way, on how to do a reconstruction of an accident and how to look at the reports, the safety reports on companies and their activity reports, and how can we help them do better. And he said, you do realize that with our company as an underwriter, you've had several clients that have reduced their premiums because they've documented their training. They've changed their culture with what you're doing. So never let it be said I didn't ask you for your business. I'm reminded of a story about Tip O'Neill. Do y'all remember who Tip O'Neill was? He was the Speaker of the House when Ronald Reagan was the president. And Tip O'Neill, big Irishman from Massachusetts, Democrat. His fourth grade school teacher came up to him, and he was a big burly guy, and she was a short, like 5'3". And he looks down at her and he said, Miss Martha, I certainly appreciate your voting for me. And she said, Tip, I did not vote for you. And he went, why? She said, because you never asked me to. I'll never let it be said that I didn't ask you to participate in this program. You will be glad you did. You will not be disappointed. So with that being said, Steve, if we want to go take a look at some of the questions and answer some of the questions in the chat, or if we have questions, we're glad to talk about them.
Hey, Jay, one question that's popped in here is, who would you recommend inside of a trucking company be participating in this training?
Every employee. We've designed it for every employee. And if you can't do every employee, you absolutely have to do the safety director, whoever you designate as you need your operations director. I would have the CEO and the president of the company do it because that's going to be cultural. I would have the dispatchers do the driver side of it at the very least. Look, we all know that dispatchers, they can't have a bad day. If they have a bad day, you lose drivers. You lose drivers, that means you lose efficiency. And so dispatchers, whoever you designate as the person that handles the accident, and you need someone designated 24/7, HR director. So, your accounting people may not need to, it might be helpful for them, but at least the safety director in their team.
Very good. And, tell us again, is this program, is it good for a year, or is it just a one-time use, or?
No, it's our standard model from that standpoint. It's once you sign up for it, it's a full year. And it's designed to be renewable. It's designed to be, we've kept it lower in price, but that does not take away from the quality and the amount of value you get from this program. This program will pay for itself 10 times over, easily, if not more than that, probably 100 times over. I mean, number one, if you start looking at the prices that we're putting on this program, you probably couldn't consult with a lawyer, for the price that we put on this program. Yeah, I guess if you're a bigger company, you could, but I mean, our lawyers cost like $750 an hour. So you get a good defense attorney, which is worth their weight in gold, and it's no telling what it is.
Very good. Let me check here, see if we have any other questions. Someone has asked here, does it address owner operators?
Owner operator, it does. it actually, this addresses not just trucking companies, but anyone. Look, nowadays, let's be honest. Nowadays, when you see the billboards going down the road, it's not just targeting 18-wheelers that are easy pickings for $250,000 by the plaintiff's attorneys. It's targeting any company that has the name on the side of the vehicle. This program is good for, if you're, matter of fact, Steve represents the logging industry. He represents the hospitality industry. He represents a number of different industries. But this program is good for if you're a local heat and air company or a plumbing company. You have your name on the side of a vehicle, whether it's a pickup truck or whether it's a salesperson driving a car. They all need to take this program because they're targets. I mean, there's a case in Corpus Christi, Steve, that you and I talked to one of our safety directors about years ago.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola. They had a
Right.
$21 million settlement because they didn't document something because one of their drivers killed somebody and they didn't document anything. And I don't know if they wouldn't have, it may not have been 21 million, but it was 21. That case was 21 million. I can't imagine that they couldn't have reduced it by doing everything properly going into that. So this is not just for trucking companies. It's for owner operators because an owner operator has their liability. Owner operator companies have their liability. Every company out there. We made our employees go through this. Every one of our employees has gone through this program already.
Another quick question here, Jay. One question is, will renew price be the same per year?
Right now, yes.
Okay. And let's see, here's a question from Matthew. Says, what is the cost for existing Infinity customers? Is this part of what we pay for already, or is this an additional cost?
This is additional. This is why it's unusual because most of our clients realize that everything we bring to the table is generally included, except for things like when we did the Ray Haight program, which was additional because Ray Haight owned the rights to it. Dan Baker program was additional because Dan owned the rights to it. Same thing with this, with Steve Setliff. Steve is a partner and we have to pay him. And so therefore this is additional. That's why we kept the price extremely low.
It makes sense.
Once again, that does not take away from the value of this program. The value is here in this program. I am obsessed with making sure everybody takes a look at this. I don't care how big or small a company is. If you need me to show up at your front door and show you some of the video that Steve is doing on this, I will do it. This is that important to this industry. We cannot continue to live with these rates continuing to skyrocket and us not doing anything about them, particularly with that gap that 70% of the accidents are caused by cars, and we are found guilty 81% of the time. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make sure this stays short, sweet, and to the point. Unless there's another question, I think it's time to say thank you very much.
One last question, real quick, Jay. Someone is asking, can one person take the course before committing to it?
You know what? I send your name in. We really haven't thought it through that far, quite frankly. We have had a few people take a look at a couple of the clips and a couple of the segments of it before making a decision. I will tell you this. I personally, if you pay for the course and you take the course and you don't like the course and you don't think we delivered and you don't think we lived up to what we're doing, I'll give you your money back. I'm not trying to do this to get rich. What I'm trying to do, I want to see this industry saved. Now I'm going to have to pay Steve his part. So,
yeah. Very good. Looks like one last question here, Jay, and then we'll close out the program. It says, do you foresee a package price with the Infinity platform? I think
no,
maybe you've already answered that. So.
No, we don't. We can't do that. We can't. I wish we could, but we can't do that. Now, what you will get with this is the dynamic checklist, which is included. And then, you'll get a chance to see what that's all about too.
Very good. Well, I don't see any other questions popping in. Just a reminder to everybody out there, we'll be sending an email to everybody that registered and those of you that attended. So if there are folks in your business that would like to see it, we'll send you an email with a link to the replay. And I do appreciate everybody that's joined the webinar this morning. I see a lot of thank yous out there, Jay. So thank you, sir, for some great information. I'm very excited that we've got this out and ready to go. So with that being said, thank you all for joining us this morning. And one real quick reminder, we got a couple of webinars coming up in the next month. Look for invites. One will be about recruiting and hiring Gen Z drivers out there. So that'll be important. Part of what you got to be mindful of is how you properly onboard and train new drivers. And we'll also have another program that will be geared around accident reconstruction. So we'll try to give everybody a good idea on what those folks do, when you should get them involved, and how they can help you defend your company. So that being said, Jay, thank you, sir. Thanks for everybody for joining, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Thank you all
Thank you,
very
Steve.
much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.